Hey everybody, welcome back to Earth Ascending, your favorite podcast for all things human design, the transformation of consciousness, and the coming age of the sleeping phoenix. Today, I'm joined by my co-host Kathi, Magic Kathi Official, and we're going to be talking about the worst parts of each of the human design aura types.
I feel like I love this episode already just because my Capricorn moon loves to make fun of people.
Yes, loves to complain.
Also that.
It's like a refined art form, complaining for a Capricorn moon.
And exposing people and calling people out on their shit. So we will probably do more of that moving forward. But today we're definitely going to shine a light on the best and the worst parts, I would say, of every human design type.
Okay, we'll do the best too.
Yeah, because, we have to
balance it out.
Exactly.
Okay, well, you're the projector. You're the one that has this focus penetrating aura that's seeing so deeply into the other. And you're sitting across from a manifesting generator. So let's start with your take on the best and the worst of being of the manifesting generator.
Oh, yes. I love that because I love all of my manifesting generator clients so much because I help them find a silver lining. So as a manifesting generator, I think the biggest gift that you have is to be so multifaceted and to be able to multitask like on so many different levels and to just not narrow yourself down to only one specific topic, like to have a lot of interest and to have a lot of energy for many different things. But most of my clients come to me because they feel like they are out of touch with anything, like they are just too scattered and too unfocused on anything. And so I think the worst part of it is complaining and wanting to put yourself into a box. Whenever I have someone in front of me that is a manifesting generator, I always give the one advice, and that's basically there's only one book that you never want to read, and that's The One Thing by Gary Keller, because there's not just one thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. I can also speak from personal experience that one of the things that people hate the most about my MG is that sometimes I can get 50 yards down the street going towards something that I think I want to be doing. And as a fourth line, I'm getting other people involved in that. I'm like, okay, who's going to be this part of the story and who's going to play this part in the game?
And then the inconsistency of following through.
Well, it's realizing that at the 55th yard line, I'm like, oh, actually, I don't want to do this.
Other route, yeah. That's like I always like to use the car analogy when it comes to explaining generators and manifesting generators. Manifesting generators, Porsche, Ferrari, speed, right? Misses all of the signs on the way and might just not actually go where the initial purpose of the driving was all about, It's like on the way, oh no, there's a gas station, let's go there. Oh, like it's like kind of feels from the outside losing the focus, but there's a silver lining, which I always like to say. So that's the highest expression of it.
Silver lining. There's also, I think, a greater intelligence to what the MG doesn't find energy for. That's been my experience too, because we've been pegged as these multifaceted, multitasking beings. But I personally feel like it's a lot more powerful for an MG to give themselves the grace to drop things. And as they do that, they actually really allocate their energy to the things that they want to do most powerfully. And one of the biggest kind of coaching things that I would give to MGs is that, even going into the idea of the Porsche, that's not necessarily a car you drive every day. An MG is not necessarily here to have the same kind of sustaining power that a pure generator has. And we'll talk more about that as we get into pure generators. But I feel like MG is, like the cheetah. You go for those short bursts of super powerful, super dynamic, no one else can do it like you can do it kind of expressions of energy or manifestations. And then a lot of the rest of the time, the cheetah is just sitting in the tree.
Which is actually interesting because it reminds me of being a projector. Because, I mean, I can't even tell you, I have this energy flowing into me and I have this drive to go so deep into a specific topic. And I always call it the projector rabbit hole of like, you don't even know what time is and you just study it to the core, you get out of it. And then you just are out of energy for, I don't know, the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's just like this, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Don't really need to do anything else because, also MGs have been called this kind of multi-dimensional, kind of energy or like a quantum leap kind of energy by some people, out there in the HD world.
Yeah.
And I think that
it might come from this whole understanding of the super brain when we talk about many different, like even with the rays, like mingling together and building that super brain. But it's not like a manifesting generator is already the super brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's about simplicity again, divine simplicity. And yeah, it's really, from what I can see in 12 years of human design and living my design for that long, it's not about being scattered. It's not about having a billion different things that you're doing. No one enjoys that. No one has fun, like scattering their energy in 15 different directions. It's about knowing that you don't always know what you really want to do when you start something and being unapologetically, giving yourself permission to just back out of things, to cancel plans, to drop out of what you were super enthusiastic about 2 days ago, and realize that that's actually the intelligence of your life force guiding you towards something better, more efficient, more evolutionary. And it takes a lot of courage because we don't, especially if you have an open solar plexus, open heart, you don't want to piss people off. You don't want to, overpromise and underdeliver. You don't want to let people down. But as an MG, you do have to kind of be selfish in that way to get the most out of your design, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I can totally see that. And I mean, the fact that you are Pisces doesn't really help sometimes. But it's, again, about not judging it, about trusting that you know exactly why it needs to happen that way. Or you trust the flow of energy that moves through you. And
the life force does.
Exactly. And not resisting that life force just because you are afraid of the judgment of other people.
Exactly.
Which is the entire reason why I love working with human design anyways, because it helps us build better relationships. If I understand that my best friend is a splenic projector, I'm not going to ask her if she wants to go into the cinema in 2 weeks. And on the day, if she cancels, I'm not going to be offended and make it mean something about me, because maybe her energy flow is just not it. It's just not something she wants to do today, and it's not because of me.
So,
next.
Projectors.
Yes, tell me, what's the best and the worst part?
The best part of projectors is the depth of insight. Well, I don't want to say the best because I might think of something else, but this is one of the best things, is that a projector, as we know, is somebody that isn't necessarily just tapping into somebody's mind, because the mind is limited in a way in that it only knows what it knows. If it's not aware of something, tapping into someone's mind to try and guide them isn't going to go very far. So what a projector does is they tap into the G center. They tap into the
core.
CPU, the core of your soul. And so there's like this delicacy and this eloquence that projectors have in calling out in a loving way, usually, who somebody really is, reminding somebody who they really are. And in a lot of cases for generators and MGs, helping people find something meaningful to do, with their energy. Because when a generator or an MG doesn't have that focus for their energy, we're like an ant, without a colony. We're just running around crazy, like thinking that we're we're dying because we don't know what to do with ourselves. And just that slight little focus, that your focus penetrating aura gives us, can start a catalytic process that allows us to get into our own alignment. It's not that you need to be there the whole time and weld us into a new timeline. It's just that you can kind of almost like bloop, just like focus us in a new direction, and it's something we would have never seen ourselves.
It's like a course correction in your energy flow.
And it's so personal. And that's the other beautiful part, is that projectors feel so personally tuned in to you. And there's like that care and that just attention to detail to one's uniqueness that's really healing for people. Because in the cross of planning era, everybody's had to kind of dissolve their uniqueness in order to fit into bigger groups and be valued and loved. And so there's like this return to seeing somebody on a really personal way. And that's like a beautiful heart healing in its own way. So I think that, and then also I think something that's overlooked for projectors is their versatility. I think projectors can also in like modern pop human design just get pigeonholed into, you're the guide, Projectors can do it all. Projectors, being masters of energy, can learn to wield energy in any area of life. If that's managing other people's energy, if that's, understanding the system of their own body to a whole other mastery level that gives them, prowess even in like athleticism, or I've seen a lot of really powerful projector athletes because they understand the system of the body in a way that a generator athlete just is not going to have the same kind of insight, most likely. And also understanding that when a projector is in the correct invitation and they have access to that energy, they can perform as all of the types. And I don't think that's spoken about enough. When
it's like the shapeshifter.
The shapeshifter, yeah, it's like when all of the pieces of the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger come together and become the super being, the super Zord. It's like the projector is maybe like the head, but they also get control of like the arms and the legs, and they can do, defeat the enemy that they couldn't before.
And I actually think, being a projector, and from my observation of myself and how I move through the world, it's because you become what you're meant to guide. And that's a risky thing, because if you're not aware of that, you literally become that. And it has nothing to do with any of your centers, defined or undefined. It's like you need to put yourself into the shoes to be able to go deep into what you're meant to guide. And so that's probably the shape-shifting element of it.
And the worst thing is, it's not every projector, but it's projectors that I've seen that
neediness.
It's more than neediness.
It's like, I need to be seen. I need to have the attention, because
it's almost like it's being it's like forcing your way into other people's energy.
Oh yeah, like how do I put that? Like to basically be so against your design, to put yourself into the front because I have something meaningful to say, listen to me kind of energy.
There's that.
And I know it better than you.
But there's also like this thirst or this hunger for other people's energy that they may not recognize themselves. And they'll use the genius mind and the intricacy of their sensitivity to other people's nature.
Like manipulative.
To manipulate their way into a false invitation and get access to the energy that they're not, the only invitation you're getting that's truly aligned is because you're designed to receive that energy. It's going to work in your system. It's like you're a diesel engine, you put diesel fuel in it. You're a hydrogen car, you put hydrogen in it. If you try and if you're trying to force the wrong fuel into this highly calibrated machine, because projectors are probably the most, advanced kind of machine that we have, it's really going to mess things up in there. And it's not easy to get that that residue out, because there's no consistent generative or manifesting aspect to the mechanics of that aura, which means the energy is not moving as consistently.
Is not rising.
The phoenix is not rising. And so I've noticed that sometimes how, a projector will see somebody's energy that they want to become in a way, or channel, and they'll use that, charming, personable, very custom tailored feel of what they can see in you and bring out for you. And it's almost like they're sneaking in the back door and they're stealing energy. And that feels really dirty as like a generator being to have that happen, because if you're not as aware, you think, oh, this is a nice person, I'm making friends with them, it's a mutual interest. And then something's missing. It's like the person leaves your house from coming over and you're like, wait, where's my vase? Or like, where's my TV remote? It's like, oh, that's such a weird feeling. Yeah. And projectors being guides, it's like, that's so the antithesis of like their purpose, to be acting from such a wounded place of personal interest. Because projectors are the ones that are specifically designed for this transition period. They've only been here since 1781. That time until now has just been them differentiating themselves from the rest of the energy in the world. And they're the ones that can put us in the proper placement and alignment and the right systems to actually make this transition smooth. They're the only ones that can do that.
Yeah.
So if they're not really stepping into that and stepping up to that as like a collective need, like we were speaking of before, it's not just about you anymore, any of us. It's like
beyond the agenda, basically. Yeah.
If it's not that true, like rave consciousness in a sense, bitterness is sure to follow.
True. And I want to speak on that too, because I felt like, more and more projectors are being born, less manifested, so that the connection to that always made me feel like projectors are actually the leaders of the new world, and it's less like the leading and the guidance. It will merge in a way where the new way of leadership is actually putting the essence of the person or the life force, the energy of a generator in the front, and then guiding in that way. And the manifestor is more like, it's my vision that I have, and this is the way to go, right? So it's less about who is the generator that gives me the energy for that. And only if, as a projector, you step out of your own little microcosm and you really see just the person in front of you that you're meant to guide, it's beyond you, right? You're just the guidance. Only then you will get that leadership position. Otherwise, it's just not. It's not the vibe.
Yeah. It doesn't carry that really highly attuned encryption in the aura that creates more and more momentum for you to be recognized. It's just like when Ra talks about primary health system, and if you're eating correctly for your design, then it's nourishing unique aspects of your brain system so that you're functioning at a higher and higher capacity. But if you're not, that nutrition is going everywhere, and it's creating this phenomenon called fat brain, where it's just, the energy is just everywhere. So it's not creating that crisp, refined kind of geometry that allows the right people to recognize you for the right things. But you mentioned manifestor there, so that must be the next type we're meant to move into.
Manifestors, I admire them. I want to say that as the best part, for the ability to be so unapologetically themselves and to take up space if they allow it to happen. And that also can be the worst part of it. So it's like a fine line, because there are certain ways of doing that. And some manifestors are really repelling with their aura, which we've heard if we learn about human design, because they are so overpowering. Like they just want to be, in a very Aries way to explain it, like just me. And it's just like me, and I'm the throne, and I'm the center, and I'm just like going forward with what my agenda is. So it can be very egotistic in a way. And then there's the other side, other manifestors that are just completely angry and frustrated and whatever you may have, and don't allow themselves to be seen, and at the same time don't like the way of living either. So it's like this passiveness that I've noticed, like even with having family members that are manifestors, that just complete in apathy and complete in like this life is awful and the world will never see me. So I see both. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say?
I love how exciting manifestors are. You know, they really bring life to a situation. And I think like in my middle years of my human design experiment, when there wasn't as much to respond to, but there was obviously a lot of the old things I wouldn't be giving my energy to anymore because I knew they were wrong for me. It was the manifestors that came in and kind of rebooted me and gave me that spark. And there were like a number of years where everyone around me was a manifestor, which felt cool, but it's also a one-way street. So if you're along for that ride, you're not really getting a word in edgewise. You know, there's a lot of great conscious manifestors that have been doing work on like nonviolent communication and being more open to other people's perspective, but I don't blame them by the nature of their aura that's closed and repelling.
Yeah, I was just about to say that might be something that I would say is something that I think is challenging, is that they are so closed off. And I mean, maybe that's also because I'm a projector and I'm used to being able to go really deep into people, and sometimes I have such a hard time going into a manifestor, and really only if I'm invited in a reading or something, then I'm able to read that person.
Yeah, it's also, it can be annoying when a manifestor knows that it's their way or the highway, but they will play they'll play collaborative. Like they'll seem like they're collaborative and they're open to your ideas, and
but at the end, no.
But really, they're just they want to use your skills, your energy, or whatever for what they're creating. And then when you're not serving that, they're nowhere to be found.
Yeah, and they just drop you. Yeah,
and that's also, it's part of it is being aware of the mechanics and not taking things personally, and understanding that there's an intelligence to even how that functions, but on a human level, it doesn't feel good. And that's just something that is to be dealt with. And then the annoying part of some manifestors, I think, is that they, like you were kind of saying, they refuse to acknowledge their power if they're really, really deeply conditioned. There's like almost like an amnesia as to who they really are, where they can't remember what it even means to have impact, or what it means to wield that impact.
It's like this. Like I've never noticed that with any other type as much as with manifestor clients. They truly give up on life, like to a very deep, because there's just this conditioning of what's the point of having energy and being in power. It will never come to fruition. Like it's this deep
resignation.
Giving. Resignation. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely beings.
Lovely beings, yes.
And there's certain things that only manifestors can do, and I've noticed that as well when it comes to people who have a really powerful, when it comes to healing, or when it comes to types of therapies, or when it comes to people who can kind of save the day.
They bring something completely new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you really wanted somebody that could really like show up for you in a powerful way, if something went wrong, it would be a manifestor.
Ra was a manifestor too.
Ra, yeah.
So.
Yes. So there's, like anybody, there's beauty and darkness, and we love it all. So I think we need to do pure generators.
Yeah, pure generators.
pure generators?
I think the best part of them is obviously when they are in alignment with their design and what they have energy for. It's just this fountain of burst, of sparks, of like, it's just amazing to see someone in their full bliss and life force. Like it's this ever-flowing life force that just flows through them, and it's so inspiring to me. Like, yeah, like when they're truly immersed in their creative process, it's just endless, a bottomless pit, and that can be really inspiring for especially someone that does not have a defined sacral as me. It's like, wow, it's like never ending, right? I love that, and the worst part of it is, I would say, not following their sacral or their authority and giving life force away and then complaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being almost, it's not quite voluntarily, but yeah, giving themselves over to being stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of times with work.
It's this victim state that we were talking about. Yeah. Most of the time, I feel like that's primarily a generator phenomena. Because that's also, if you look at a global perspective, generators, life force, workforce, energy, being stuck in the matrix.
Mm-hmm. Using one of the most powerful energies available to fuel things that are not only incorrect for them, incorrect for
the world.
Anybody.
Yeah, the world. Because it's like you, as a generator, have that life force. And instead of flowing with what source wants you to do, what that life force wants you to do, you signed up for being a slave with your life force.
Mm-hmm. And then reinforcing that with all the reasons why it would never work if you did do what you really felt. Mm-hmm. And almost creating these whole worlds of excuses that they can even get lost in. And then they're just like spiraling in this other whole dimension of fear and tension and bitterness even, and then it's just like, but you have all the power, all of it. Like, and even if you were to use that power in the most simple, seemingly not world-changing way, it would change the world on a deep level. And that's one of the most, I think, beautiful and important things I always want to remind generators is that even if you think you know what you want is like $1 billion, but the next possible thing that you can do is just enjoy dancing in your living room, that's still a quicker path to that $1 billion than trying to mastermind some convoluted way to get there through the mind. It's always that much simpler for a generator. But that's what makes it so illusory almost, is that it doesn't seem like it can be that simple. And because people don't understand this dynamic that your aura is literally magnetizing life to you, if they don't see that piece, they're chasing their own tail for decades. Until a generator really understands that they are literally pulling the world towards them to a greater degree to which they are willing to enjoy themselves. But everything in our conditioning says the opposite, and it gets a really hard spell to break.
And one thing I want to highlight too, I see that in the human design community, but then also with the specific types, a lot of people, I want to say, put like projectors, manifestors, reflectors on a pedestal almost, because they are rarer than generators. And so generators, I've heard that a lot, feel not special. Like, oh yeah, I'm the workforce energy. I'm just meant to work and there's nothing meaningful or purposeful or special. And so sometimes even that can put them into this life force draining vibration.
Yeah.
Because they feel like, what's the point? I'm just a slave to a projector guiding me or whatever. And so it's almost like they identified with that slavery life force kind of dynamic.
Yeah, like a drone almost. There's nothing unique about it, so why bother? And that just perpetuates the cycle. But I like to say to generators, your unique design is an answered prayer to what the world needs. The more that you trust yourself or trust your life force, however you want to look at it, the more that you become the unique shape and tonality and rhythm and creativity and genius of what that solution is that you're here to bring.
Yeah.
And it comes to you in synchronistic, rhythmic, ecstatic waves, as opposed to the very linear, logical, kind of punitive and boring way that we're taught to approach problem solving. So you're literally a channel for the earth's genius, you know, and the mind is not necessarily of the earth a lot of the time. From the core of the earth, that's where your energy comes. The same intelligence that designed the very basis of this world, all living forms, came from the intelligence of the life force, the core design crystal bundle in the core of our planet. Yeah. That's what drives you. Your mind can never know. If it's coming from your mind, it's not your truth. But anyway, we love our generators. We're passionate about empowering our generators.
Yes, because they are the vessel of life force, basically. And without the building blocks, I mean, I know that myself, being a projector, without the like, I'm not able to do all of the things, you know? I'm not able to restructure the world by myself. We need those soldiers of life force, so to speak, to build things.
And they set the tone.
Yeah.
So if their frequency is off, all of our frequency is off. So finally, Reflectors.
Yes.
What do you think about reflectors?
I want you to start, since you are an unconscious reflector in a way.
Conscious reflector.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's something really interesting about having no purpose. And that's something that's really scary to people because, again, we live in this left brain strategic paradigm that's ending where purpose is equated with survival. Okay, I have a place in the greater pattern of things, so I feel safe in that, so I will survive, and my ego will survive. So as a reflector, it's kind of really interesting to feel out and understand, like, what if no one cares what you do? Like, it's a completely open game. If you like doing it, do it. If you don't. No one cares. Like, no one's paying attention to you, maybe. And that can also feel like, what? No one's looking at me? No one's valuing me? No one's empowering me? It's like, that is a special kind of freedom.
It's interesting that you explain it in that way, because I would never say that the reflector doesn't have a purpose. Because for me, I mean, they just reflect. So it's not a purpose that comes from the ego, but it's about what does it do to you to be in that environment and allowing that to happen? What does it do to you to be exposed to those people? What does it show? And so not identifying with those sensations, but to trust that it's just something that flows through you. So you can reflect it maybe back to the person or to the world. So there is a purpose in a way, or an assignment for a reflector to just be in non-resistance and to flow.
I think that's the key.
Yeah, because that's also why they are attached to the lunar cycle. It's just flow.
Yeah, they're really interesting beings.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not that many of them. So we don't have as much exposure, per se, to base our observations on what really defines a reflector. And they're all so different.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a lot of different moving parts here. And I think, yeah, reflectors are great at reflecting back to people, but I don't sense that gives them that much.
They don't even notice that half of the time that they do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know why, but I keep attracting a lot of reflector clients, and even in my personal life, a lot of reflectors, which you wouldn't think, right? Because they are rare. And I've kind of observed and studied them because of that. And it's where most of the time I notice if they don't really work with human design, they just get lost in what they are meant to reflect.
Mm-hmm. Well, they get lost in what they're reflecting, and they kind of identify and try to become that and stick to that.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the number one toxic trait of reflectors, which is trying to stick to one thing. You literally have a Teflon aura. You're non-stick by nature.
Yeah.
So using all that energy to stick to something, that's grinding the gears in a way that is not fun. And I've seen that in reflectors where there's like this 100% like loyalty to a certain role or identity, but there's a deep, deep despair as well, because they're not allowing themselves to have what is probably the primary experience of the reflector. And what makes them so special is that they can have such a pure experience of consciousness itself. They can have such a pure experience of life. You know, there is no you, so you can fully become
a channel.
Purity itself. You know, a reflector in the middle of the forest under the full moon, like you are one with that entire ecosystem. That is a very special experience for any being. Trying to fit yourself in a little box in the Western world, you know, you're going to feel the most pain of that experience that we've already spoken to in, you know, terms of a generator or a manifestor or a projector. You're going to feel the deepest despair of the not self if you don't let yourself just float like a jellyfish and understand that your experience is an impersonal one. Nothing needs to be yours. And that's why I started with maybe poking a little bit around this no purpose thing, not as a, you know, condemnation of purposelessness, but as like a sense of experimentation and freedom and non-attachment, because I haven't seen that many examples of reflector that's comfortable with what they are. So it's true, because at the end of the day they still want to give some sort of meaning. But I think if you understand as a reflector that your meaning is just to be that reflection and to sit in front of someone and reflect whatever needs to be reflected to them. And even that is not up to you, because it also is dependent on the perception about the reflection that you give and the interpretation of the person in front of you. So it's all very interpersonal. Yes. Part of my understanding of reflectors feels like they're kind of like God's eyes on the planet, you know, to take in things polarity free, potentially, pure awareness. And also we know that they hold a very powerful place in community. So when a reflector finds the right place with that undefined or open G center that they definitely do have, then they remember who they are. You know, so there is a certain kind of alignment that can happen with a reflector being in the right place for the right time. It's not to say it's forever, but you are the one that's meant to be here to see what's different. And that's the biggest gift I think that the reflector has. They can see what is truly unique. And that's the reflection that we need. We don't need you to sit in front of us like a projector and show us why we're lovable and why we're, you know, special. That's why we have projectors. You know, we need you to show us what we can't see. We need you to show us what we don't see. We need you to tell us what you see when you're in a space where no one else is seeing. And I think that's the closest thing to a purpose for a reflector. And again, that's not saying that anything's missing by saying that. It's saying that that's a huge freedom in that. And when you explore from that free place, then you really see what you are able to see as a reflector, which is what no one else can see.
I'm pretty sure Teal Swan, if those who listen know her, is
Has
a
she
reflector.
shown her chart?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah? Okay.
No, I know her birthday. I know she's a Gemini, but I'm pretty sure she's a reflector. So that would kind of be, because she always says, you know, I'm just mirroring the parts of you that need integration. And she's very not identified, but then at the same time, she's been, you know, like people hate her sometimes, because I think a reflector aura can be really triggering too. Most of the time, yeah.
I mean, I don't have a reflector aura, but
yeah. And I think one thing that I want to add to maybe what can be challenging about reflectors is if they like I've seen a lot of workaholics, reflectors especially. And there was something else that I wanted to say. Now I lost my point.
Well, what that reminded me of is when reflectors get too identified with what they think they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're basically getting all amped up on a temporary energy, and they're all about it, and they're trying to make something happen, and then 4 to 8 weeks later, they're like crying over what didn't happen, and they're a victim of what didn't happen, and it's like, no, that was never your job to do any of that. You're just witnessing. You're just the witness.
Yeah. I think the most fun thing to do is really to watch reflectors, to study what's happening in the world. Like, yeah, I think that's the most fascinating thing. It's like watching, yeah, as you said, like tapping into the eyes of God. Like what's happening. Like it's so fun to know a reflector and to see what's going on in their life. I mean, I've had a lot of reflectors, for example, struggling with health, and I'm like, okay, that's the state of the world. It's like with cancer, for example, what kind of cancer? And then going deep into, that might be the projector in me, I want to analyze everything. So why is that specific form of cancer in that reflector? What is it saying about the state of the world? And so I think that's such a huge gift that they have.
A gift they often probably don't know they have. They're like, they're like the reflection of the world. They're like a symbol.
God's mirror.
All right.
Like the moon.
Well, we did it. We went through all of the types and their shadows, their light, and everything in between. Thank you for being with us on this episode of Earth Ascending, and we'll see you next time.